economic understandings of Latin America. We're going to go over some of the economic ideas and terms as we preview Latin America. What is scarcity? Scarcity is the limited supply of something. Every country in the world must deal with the problem of scarcity. No country has everything that it needs for all its people. So in order to satisfy those needs and wants, we don't have the ability to do that within any one country. So we have to answer a variety of questions to best meet those needs, and we trade for what we don't have. The example down below is food shortages in Venezuela. It's dividing Venezuela, and one of the current events we studied talked about some of the long lines that's occurring, mainly because it's got a more command-based economy. They've got a dictator that controls the economy. And basically there's three economic questions that every country must develop or answer, and that determines what kind of economic system that the country has. Is based on how they answer these three questions. They've got limited amount of resources. You don't have everything you need to meet those needs and wants of the people, so you need to answer these questions to best do that. What goods are you going to produce? How are you going to produce those goods? And who's going to consume the goods? Is it going to be your people, or are you going to sell and trade for what you need? The way a country answers or society answers those economic questions will determine its economic system. And again, the three types of economic, actually there's four types of economic systems are traditional, command, market, and of course mixed, and that's what most countries have as a mixed economy. In a traditional economy, you have custom and habits of the past are used typically to decide what goods and services are going to be produced, and how it's going to be distributed, and who it's going to be consumed by. Each member of the society knows early on what their role is going to be. Jobs are handed down from one generation to the next. What your grandfather or great-grandfather did, they're going to hand down those traits, and that's taught as it's passed down from generation, and that's what you're going to do, and that's what determines your role. People are dependent upon fulfilling those traditional roles. And as you can see from the picture, we've got hunting and gathering. You've got cattle herding is often a part of traditional economy. You've got subsistence farming. In a traditional economy in Latin America, an example is a tribe in South America. It's the Yanomami Indians in Brazil and Venezuela. The men and women and children have specific jobs, and they involve raising food in small gardens, hunting and gathering. Each person, each villager has a role. Everybody in the village depends on that role. They all have resources. They all have designed set roles that they do in order for the tribe to survive. So some are hunter and gatherers, and some grow crops in the small garden. The tribe does not have a central government. It does not tell the people what to grow or what to do. The government does not tell the members what they must do. Everybody knows because it's basically passed down from generation to generation. They do not have a system of buyers and sellers. Basically, they grow what they need for their village, and typically it's not sold to outsiders, or outsiders in this particular case they don't. But basically they make just enough for their village to survive and function. In a command economy, it's a centralized command economy. The government planning groups make most of the economic decisions and determine such things as which goods and services are going to be produced, the prices that you're going to sell it for, and how much you're going to earn. Individuals and corporations or businesses generally do not own the businesses or farms. It's owned by the government. Workers at the business are told what to produce, how much to produce at a given time, and that's called a quota. So they have a set quota. You have so many things that you need to produce in a given day, and that's usually set by the government. Their goal is to assign quotas to all workers. The expectation is that you will produce this much and meet that quota so that everybody in the country is able to have the goods and services that's planned for. But there's some problems as well as some benefits to the command economy. So some of the problems that you can experience in a command economy is this: predicting the goods that people will need. For example, let's say the government estimates that they say, let's grow more crops because we can feed more people. Well, that's a good goal, but here's some of the things that can occur with that goal. let's say they decide to make more tractors and they feel like that's an important part of producing more food. More tractors could mean that the farmers can grow more crops. That's a good thing. More crops mean that people have more food. However, let's say that the factories are busy making tractors and they can't make enough shoes. So the people are out there working in the fields, but they don't have any shoes to wear. So it's very difficult as one government agency to predict all the different various needs and demands that the people have, and even those demands in terms of basic needs. Some of the benefits, though, of a command economy are this. Prices are controlled, and people know exactly how much everything's going to cost. For example, your basic needs, food prices, are always kept low because food's a basic need. People for clothing and housing, people pay a certain amount. They know what that cost is going to be. Healthcare and education is provided at no cost. So those basic needs are provided. Well, that's a good thing for a lot of people who maybe didn't have that with a different type of government or a different type of economic system in the past. So now the government may decide, let's do this, let's go to a command economy and provide these economic things for people. Well, that can be a good thing. The problem is some of the things that are expensive are luxury items. For example, TVs, computers may be very high, and that, while it's a benefit that everything is low for their basic needs, your luxury items are going to be very, very expensive. One of the other things that can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, is wages. Your wages set by the government. That's a good thing. You know how much you're going to get paid. The bad thing is there's no competition. And when there's no competition, if you're highly skilled and you've got a skill that helps the government produce things that are highly desirable, you are still set and paid at a pretty low rate compared to the world. So you might be paid in a market or mixed economy at a much, much higher rate. It doesn't incentivize you to work either. So those are some of the problems and benefits of a command economy. Typically, around the world, command economies have their basic needs met, but they tend to be poorer countries. Command economies in Latin America is Cuba. It's got a centralized command economy. The government owns all the factories and most of the farms. About 90% of people in Cuba work for the government. The government sets quotas for the farmers, and they have a certain amount they need to produce, as do the factory workers. And this makes sure that everybody in the country gets their basic needs met by basically setting these quotas. Cuba trades for the goods that they need from another country that they cannot make for themselves. For example, a great example of that is their number one export is sugarcane. They grow a large amount of sugarcane in their country. However, they don't have a lot of energy sources. So they produce and sell their sugarcane to other countries, and they purchase those energy sources such as oil and natural gas. Unfortunately, Cuba cannot sell enough of the sugarcane to purchase the amount of oil and natural gas it needs to run the country. So sometimes they have to close factories or shut off power, and it's called blackouts. And they can't run their country all at the same time with everything going on. And that's some of the problems that you see in a command economy. And that's very much the case and has been the case in Cuba. In a market economy, it's decentralized, meaning decisions are guided by changes in prices that occur, and how you set the price, it's set by buyers, you and me who go to the store and buy things, and the sellers, the businesses that make those items that we buy off the shelf in the marketplace. Another name for a market system is, you may see it called a free enterprise. That means everybody's free to trade with who they want to. Capitalism is another word that you use in replacement of economic systems. So capitalism, we have a capitalistic society. Laissez-faire is a French term, and it means free business, free trade. And there was no restrictions on businesses, laissez-faire. In the market economy, businesses and farms are generally owned by individuals or private businesses. Each business decides what they want to produce and how much, and that is an individual decision rather than being in a government decision. The law of supply and demand, how much you make and how much people buy, that ends up setting the price. Supply is the amount of goods that are available that a company makes, and demand is how much you want of that. Are you willing to pay a certain amount for an item, like an iPhone? In a market economy, let's take a look. A young lady wants to start her business, and she's going to build and sell computer games. She can charge whatever she wants for that game. She can charge $30, she can charge $300, or even $3,000. I personally would argue she'd have a hard time selling a individual game for $300 or $3,000, but she could sure try to do that. However, since kids they don't have to buy a video game. They don't. They have to buy food and clothing and water and housing, but they don't have to buy a video game. So the video game maker then needs to figure out and find a price that is low enough that the people will buy, kids will buy it, but high enough so she can pay her workers and pay herself, and paying herself would be making a profit. So there's that supply and demand. That's a good example of how price is set. Here's some of the problems in a market economy. Sometimes goods and services go up in price. If there is a great demand for something, the price might go up so much that people can't afford to buy it. And that's what we consider inflation. But that happens in a market economy. Another problem is if a company does not manage its money well, it can go out of business, and the workers lose their jobs and their income. And that's always the case in a market system, but that's sort of the risk. There's always risks and benefits to a market economy. That's one of the problems and the risks. The benefit is, though, that consumers can usually find the goods they want. They are free to earn as much money as they want. So if you have a skill and you've got a good education and you can go out and market yourself and make something and run a business or buy a business, you can make as much money as the marketplace will pay you. Not so in a command economy. So if you want to buy goods and services, you can do it based on the demands and the wants of the people that are going to buy it. Businesses are free to find new ways to make better products at lower prices. So you've got competition. Competition keeps the prices low, as low as they can be. And it also incentivizes people to work as hard as they can and get paid for what they're worth. Those are some of the big advantages of a market economy. Market economies in Latin America. Let's take a look at Mexico. It's a good example of a market economy, or towards the market in Latin America. Individuals and individual businesses own most of the businesses in Mexico, and so, same thing with the farms. They employ people to build a variety of goods and services in Mexico and other countries. Individuals and corporations or businesses also sell services to people. And they're free to decide what they're going to buy and sell. Okay, a lot of free trade. The government provides some laws, though, to make sure that the businesses run smoothly and fairly. They don't want to employ children under a certain age, let's say, or they have some safety regulations, or they have some taxes. That's all government involvement. Well, some of those government involvement things are good. It's still government involvement. So it's definitely a mix, but it's toward the market end because there is so much free trade and free choice. The Mexican government does not set the prices for goods and services, and it does not own many of the businesses and farms. In a mixed economy, it's a combination of two or more of the economies that we've just described. There's no pure command or pure market economies. To some degree, most modern economies have characteristics of all of those systems and often are mixed. So that's why we have a picture of the mixing bowl. You're going to see a little bit of all of those economic systems together. Most economies are closer, though, to one end or the other on the spectrum. And they either may have more government involvement, so they'd be down towards the command, even though they're still a mixed economy, or they may be down toward the market economy, like Mexico. It's still a mixed economy, but it's down toward the market end. In a truly free market economy, for example, the government would not be involved at all. There'd be no safety regulations, no taxes, no laws to protect workers from unfair bosses. There would be no rules at all to make sure credit cards were properly protected. So you as a consumer have no protection. If somebody wants to rip off your credit card, you don't have any recourse or laws to protect you. You just lose money. Many societies have chosen, though, to have some type of rules, and that's where you see government involvement to protect consumers, workers, and businesses. There's rules to reduce the freedoms that businesses have, but they're also there to protect the consumers. So that's kind of a good description of a mixed